most people don't believe in magic, but sex is the foundation of what magic is. And it, in olden days, in the origins of life, and in prostitution itself, let's take Rome and Greece, for example. The temples of Aphrodite, the process that they would go through would be these priestesses of the temple would essentially line the temple itself. And people, not just men, but men, women, teenagers, anybody that really felt the need to visit this temple and ask for something of this goddess, they would come and they would bring offerings. And these offerings were to appease the goddess itself, or to sustain the temple itself. One or the other. Either would be acceptable depending on what the high priestess, which I'm not entirely sure if they called them the high priestess in Greco-Roman temples, but we'll say high priestess for lack of a better word. So the high priestess would determine, either for that night or for that week, what they needed to sustain and to survive. And she would pray to the goddess and see what the goddess would like or what would appease her. And then throughout the week, they would sift through not just what they needed, but where they felt compelled to heal, if that makes any sense. They never picked just anybody. Everybody couldn't just walk up to the temple for these sex goddesses and get some punani. That's not how it worked. They would have to be picked by the goddess itself, essentially. The priestesses, like I said, they're taught at a very young age how to connect with that goddess energy, and that gives them the direct understanding, the intuitive understanding of what the divine goddess would like. And so we think about it, I'm speaking on it as if it's a third-party entity, because that's the way it was taught in that region at that time. But the divine goddess energy is within every single person on this planet. Now, women have more divine goddess energy than men do, but the divine goddess energy is anything that is capable of growing, creating, and birthing something into this world. So it could be anything from an actual human being to an idea to being an artistic or a creative person in itself, being a healing or a caring or a nurturing person. All of these are feminine qualities. They are qualities of the divine goddess. And the divine goddess, just like the divine God, is two halves, the yin and the yang, of the same whole. They are what makes up God. If God is everything and we are made in God's image, then God has to be a collection of two, the same way we are a collection of two. So we are both feminine and masculine, just the way God is. And the only difference is God does not have necessarily a gender, per se. So with the divine goddess energy, what you're doing is, in these temples, you're making offerings to the temple. And when your offering is accepted, you're escorted through these different rooms and these different chambers, and you're brought through an experience of anointing. So essentially, like I was talking about earlier, you have to be vibrating on a higher level for that healing and that manifestation to really take hold the way it was meant to, the way sex was meant to. So essentially what they do is they take you through a phase of a domino effect of phases where they raise your vibration higher and higher. And you see this in the Bible when Mary Magdalene washes Jesus's feet with her hair and with her perfumes. It is her anointing him. What it does is there's certain things, I'll put it to you this way. There's certain things that a woman can do that can just make her man feel like he is a god, right? Okay, so there's just like that certain switch that we have that just takes over. And if we allow it to take over, see, that's the key, because it's in all of us. It's just a matter of, have you subconsciously blocked your ability to access it? Or have your insecurities been preventing you from the freedom of movement, of being able to allow that femininity to take over? Because all of us have it. That energy that it makes him vibrate higher, but it makes her vibrate higher because she's making him vibrate higher. And this is why monogamy for certain people is very important, because if you find somebody that you connect with on that vibrational level, that both of you are on the same frequency, and not just on the same frequency, but you baby step each other's frequency up the ladder, that is a beautiful thing, and it can't be replaced. And if you find that, or you come across that, or you feel drawn to find that yourself, then that is what's for you. Now, I personally believe that polygamy is the natural way, but everybody doesn't believe like that, and that's okay too. It's all right for you to not want to go out and participate in a sex goddess ritual and then go home to your girlfriend, or for you to have 3 or 4 wives and they maybe have a husband or two. Like, it's okay for you to not have those inclinations. Now, as you're going through the temple and you're gradually going from room to room, be it because of lap dances, or because like Mary Magdalene did, like the washing of the feet, or aromatherapy, or whatever each room is dedicated to do, the intention of all of them is to get you to the highest vibration. And then at the end of the whole cycle of everything, when you've been through all the rooms, by the time you're at the end, your muscles are loose and you're vibrating high and you're open to the divine and you're connected with everything around you. And then you're taken into a room where a priestess will perform a rite or a ritual that is specific to what it is that you're looking for. So be it you asked her for a manifestation, then you and the goddess, or you and the not goddess, the divine priestess will probably copulate, and then that manifestation would come too. But then there's other situations where men are seeking information or advice on certain things. It could be that he really just wants to be in the company of a woman, and the whole vibration raising process landed with a couple girls in his bed that he may not be having sex with, or may be having sex with, or whatever he so felt just being in the energy and the company of people. It was a process of anointing, like I said before. And it was a two-sided situation. The men and the patrons that were coming into the priestess temple were essentially praising the goddess. They were uplifting the energy of the divine woman. At the same time, the priestesses are healing and anointing the men with protection and with health and with happiness and with sometimes just massages, and like it was essentially like a more sex driven, more spiritual driven spa. And what they did was, by the end of it, you either learned something about sexuality or you came out completely rejuvenated. But it's done in a process and in a way to where the women weren't depleted, the men weren't depleted, nobody was vibrating on a low level. They made sure that they raised everybody's vibration to meet the level of the divine goddess and achieve what it is that they came and were looking for. Now, the problem came with prostitution when worship of the divine goddess became illegal, meaning when the Christianization of the world started to take over. Not saying that there's anything wrong with being a Christian or with Christianity, just that during the time where the propaganda and the media was driven towards converting people from the old ways into the more modern Abrahamic societal structure that we have now. Essentially, what they did was they made anything that looked like divine feminine into witch practice. And not just that, because Catholicism during the witch hunts, Catholicism was considered just as equally bad and horrid of a crime as being a witch was. Because if you think about the foundations, just the simple foundations of Catholicism, the lighting of the candles, the types of prayers, the way you pray, the praying to Mother Mary, that all of that were the foundations of divine feminine worship. And anything that looked like divine feminine worship at the time was considered witchcraft, or it was just outlawed in general. So what they did was they started to persecute people that would practice stuff like this. And that's where you see the tearing down of all the temples and the burning of everything. And that's when they started to hide all of the documents at the library at Alexandria. And there's a whole slew of events that happened afterwards. In theory, it's why they had to move Mary Magdalene and the Holy Grail. It's why the Ark of the Covenant had to carry everything, had to move everything, keep everything hidden and secret, because essentially they were what was carrying the foundation of the divine feminine worship. And without those aspects, the woman would not only die, but be buried beneath a slew of toxic masculinity, for lack of a better word. Essentially what it was the powers that be at the time didn't want women to be recognized for our potential, because essentially if we're saying that sexuality and that femininity are the foundation of the most powerful magic in the world, then the only way to suppress that magic in this world is to suppress those who bear it. And the only way to suppress those who bear it is to just assume that they all have it. So if they assume that all the women have the gift of manifestation and femininity and sexuality, which we do, then they can just suppress the lot of us all together. It's easier if they keep us and our ideas behind locked doors. It's easier if they tell us that we're crazy, or that we're making shit up, or that in our minds, if they don't accept it as a part of their reality, it just can't be. But we're coming into an age where that isn't the case anymore. The divine goddess, the divine feminine, she's starting to speak out more, and she's speaking out through women everywhere. All over you will find songs that are about women claiming their sexuality, and they're claiming their rights to be able to speak on their sexuality because it's their own. Like, you have no right or responsibility to ever in your life open your mouth and say anything about what I can and cannot think about my body and my sexual wants and needs. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow myself to experience myself to the fullest degree. And the more women do this on this planet, the more we're unlocking that divine feminine energy. So now that we're all caught up on the origins of prostitution and where it came from, I wanted to touch just a little bit on where it's come to be now. So nowadays we look at prostitutes and we see